Hello everyone, I hope you're all having a lovely day. I was happily surprised today when my mom brought me over some of the first blooms of lilac. I'll show you, they're just kind of starting to pop open, and these are the light purple ones. The dark purple should be popping up in maybe about a week, and then after that will be the white. But this is what you would call the traditional lilac. This is the Syringa vulgaris, which is the name of the very simple lilac plant that you find across the United States and throughout Europe. So I wanted to talk a little bit about a couple of things with lilac. It's one of those plants that is it's very important in my family and has been for many generations, especially magically. So I want to start with just some basics about the plant for most of you who know and love and enjoy the amazing aroma of the lilac. It is a feminine plant. It is associated with Venus and also associated with the element of water. So it's one of those plants that, depending on which variety you have, in the simple variety, you'll get 4 little petals in these wonderful little grape clusters, and they're magnificent. They're one of the most fragrant blossoms in the flower world. They're also one that blooms for the shortest amount of time, so it's a very fleeting plant. It's one that you really have to enjoy in the moment and savor just every blossom that comes along. Now, it's a very old, this plant has many traditions that are extremely ancient, going all the way back to mythology. I think one of the first stories around the lilac is Pan was in love with Syringa, which is why it's called Syringa vulgaris. And Syringa was a water nymph, and he was chasing her through the forest, and she was not interested in his advances, so she turned herself into a lilac bush, and he couldn't find her. And he did eventually find the lilac bush itself, and it's thought that he broke off a little piece of one of the branches and he made it into his flute. And that's where that particular one of the first stories about lilac comes from. And it's changed throughout the years, the perceptions. I think originally, or maybe what we think of most when we think of lilac, is a blessing plant, one that traditionally is thought of to bless the entire passage of life. So starting from birth until death, it follows a natural order. It's one that we see as reflecting our own passage through time. So fleeting, vibrant, full of life, and lasting, having this cycle that goes all the way from birth to death. So you would put this over a baby's head at their birth and it would be considered good luck. And when a person is at the end of their life, it would also be considered a symbol of remembrance in a way. So that's part of it. Now, there's a little deeper story to lilac, and that's kind of where some of my family tradition comes in. It is a plant that did come from southeastern Europe, and in Italy, and especially northern Italy, where my part of the family is from, it has other connotations. It was a protective plant, a deeply protective plant. So this was a plant that was thought to repel evil, to dispel any type of unwanted spirit in your home or on your property. They were planted in hedges all the way around properties, and then also planted on graves. And I think the planting on graves was maybe a little bit later, like probably the beginning of the 19th century, so more of the Victorian and a little bit after. In Port Townsend, where I was born and where my mother was born and where my grandparents lived, they had a large property, and it was my grandmother's favorite flower. And because of all of the protective elements to it, she actually planted lilacs by seed and made a hedge around the entire property, which was several acres. So we had acreage of lilacs that kind of boxed in the whole property, and were seen as protective. And in that same way, in our town cemetery, which my grandfather actually was the caretaker after he retired, most of the older graves had lilac bushes planted on top of them. And that was for two reasons. So the one that I mentioned earlier about remembrance, but the other reason is it was thought to root any type of vampire energy in place. So if you had a lilac tree planted on your grave, you would not be able to rise if you were a vampire. Now, this goes way, way back to Italy, Romania, because it was one of the first plants that was considered a vampire repellent. And it wasn't just considered to, I mean, it was considered protective, but actually also repellent, like garlic. Now, garlic is far easier to keep all year round. It's very abundant. You can keep it in, you can dry it and put it on your doors. Lilac is fleeting, so even though lilac is considered to be more powerful than garlic in this particular respect, it was harder to come by. So they would make it into oils or into perfumes, and that was used to protect you all year round from any type of vampiric energy. And that was both a sanguine vampire, but also a psychic vampire. And I feel like that's kind of where things evolved with at least the potion that I make, that was very much inspired by family traditions, is that it is thought to clear away any type of psychic vampire attack. And if anyone has ever had any type of a psychic attack, you know that your clouding can get kind of fuzzy, you get a headache, you might have some strange sort of tinkling sensations, like something just isn't quite right. And it's interesting, when you use it, it pretty much dispels it almost immediately. It isn't, and I don't want to confuse this with kind of the more popular idea that's come to be with toxic positivity of certain people are psychic vampires, or certain people are draining you, and there is a little bit of that, but I think it's a more complex. This really goes to more of a basic, almost like magick or the evil eye, malocchio, where that energy is very, very specifically directed at you, and you are very specifically being drained. And it is just a way to dispel it and return it to sender, if you will, without any harm coming to you. And yeah, so one of the ways that you do that is by making a potion, which is what we do every springtime. We do probably 3 or 4 large batches every year, and we sell our potion. We keep it for ourselves. I pass along the recipe. If you have your own lilacs and want to do it by yourself, I don't hoard that particular knowledge. I want people to make their own and to experience that that whole process of creating their own protective lilac spray. But it does come down from a very long tradition, and it's just a very potent, powerful plant. It's also was used for exorcism. It was used to basically, repel any type of evil or any type of parasitic energy drain. And I feel like at this particular time, it's important to have that in your arsenal of self-protection and protection of everyone else. I think as things progress in the next few months, we'll see how everything evolves, but I wrote about this in my second book as fiction, but I think little by little, I'll be opening up a little bit more about some of our traditions that have been kept secret or just kept within family or kept within people, like a very tight circle. And I would like to share a little bit more, little by little, with the hope that it's helpful and that it's something that people can sort of use in their own life. And I think up until this point, I was not doing that because, or just on a one-to-one basis, but I think the time has come. So we'll see how that all evolves. I'm trying to write more books too, but I think it'd be nice to do something that's, I don't need to veil behind fiction. And one of those things is, of course, the lilac potion. So consider this to be a little primer on what this plant is. I'm going to get into many more details about it, well, in the class, but also on my page as I start making my own potion, probably within the next few days. But I just wanted to sort of give you a little primer into the beauty of the lilac and the power of the lilac, and I hope that it is useful. Thank you.